adr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Niger's deposed the president Bazoum, now vulnerable to prosecution for crimes including treason, as the state court lifts his immunity.
The decision has just been taken. For the time being, we are taking action, and Mr. Mohamed Bazoum's lawyers collective will be communicating shortly today.
Senegalese and Sierra Leone authorities agreed to deepen bilateral ties and cooperation.
Les deux chefs d'État ont revu l'état de la coopération bilatérale sur le plan politique.
The two heads of state reviewed the state of bilateral cooperation in the political, diplomatic, economic, social, and cultural spheres and identified concrete opportunities for closer collaboration in these areas.
Trial of Guinea's former Second General Sadiba Coulibaly opens in Conakry, and a constitutional review committee in Ghana proposes that presidents should pay taxes as a sign of good leadership to the citizenry. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us, and a warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Let's begin in the Sahel, precisely in Niger, where a lot is going on lately, ranging from the economic crisis, the border closure and crude oil dispute, as well as the internal workings. But the very first from Niamey is the ruling by the state court on Friday removing the immunity of deposed President Mohamed Bazoum, who the junta accuses of multiple crimes, including treason and advocating terrorism. Under house arrest since the coup d'etat of July 26, 2023, the former president has lost his presidential immunity. During the hearings at the state court, the former president's lawyers denounced justice under the orders of the CNSP. The defense claims to have never had access to their client's file. Old Saleh Mustafa Said is one of Bazoum's lawyers.
As you have seen, two requests were made by the military court judge and the military court government commissioner. The examining magistrate withdrew his request in its first decision. The court therefore noted the resignation of the military court government, the public prosecutor. The court declared the government commissioner's request admissible, and the court ordered the lifting of His Excellency Mr. Mohamed Bazoum's immunity. For the moment, we are taking note of this decision, and the collective will be communicating shortly. He had filed a request with the president, and he had already been prosecuted, and then they discovered that it was illegal. The law says that immunity must be waived before a person can be prosecuted, but the examining magistrate took the blow and had already said that he was not qualified to accuse Mr. Mohamed Bazoum. That's why the judge resigned. The decision has just been taken. For the time being, we are taking action, and Mr. Mohamed Bazoum's lawyers collective will be communicating, God willing, shortly today.
Pour le moment, nous prenons acte et le collectif des avocats de M. Mohamed Bazoum vont communiquer, Inch'Allah, incessamment dans la journée.
While Mohamed Bazoum refuses to resign and considers himself the legitimate president of Niger, he risks a long-term prison sentence if prosecuted by the military in power. Still in Niger, the ruling government is alleging the theft of its crude oil at the loading terminal in neighboring Benin without mention of any individual or group of individuals. In response to this development, the Nigerian Minister of Oil, Mohamed Mustafa Bake, Thursday addressed staff members in ensuring that the valves for oil exports to Benin were effectively closed. The minister denounced the alleged oil theft and called on citizens to be more vigilant and patriotic. Augustine Colley tells us more.
The claim by the Nigerian authority regarding its stolen crude oil is unverified by any other source outside General Abdurrahman Chiani's cabinet. During a press briefing, the Nigerian oil minister Mohamed Mustafa Bake said chains and padlocks have been placed on the valves to prevent the export of oil to the Semei loading platform. Niamey insists that the pipeline will remain closed and oil exports suspended until Benin and WAPCO agreed for Niger to witness the loading and control what is being loaded. Niger, already faced with a dynamic socio-economic situation occasioned by the July 26 coup that toppled President Mohamed Bazoum, has its population banking on crude export to revive the economy. But their hope remains slim as the minister calls on them to demonstrate patriotism to cope with the crisis. Benin, for its part, has yet to respond to the latest accusation from Niger, which had earlier accused it of harboring foreign army bases in an attempt to destabilize the Sahelian nation. The friction between these two states and members of the ECOWAS community began shortly after the coup last year and widened following Niger's refusal to open its land borders with Cotonou, despite the lifting of economic sanctions imposed by the regional bloc. Regional experts have in the meantime cautioned Niger and Benin to embrace dialogue in resolving the ongoing crisis.
Augustine Kole with that report. Now over in Benin, the 5 Nigerian nationals arrested last week at the Semekpoji terminal were on Thursday presented to the prosecutor of the Court for the Repression of Economic Offences and Terrorism. While 2 of the men were released, the other 3 were kept under further arrest by the state of Benin. Here is Imo Edit with more details.
After a week in police custody, these Nigerian nationals were finally presented to the Create prosecutor on Thursday. The Deputy General Director of the company, WAPCO Niger, and 2 of her compatriots are due to appear in court on June 17. They are accused of having presented false badges before entering the Semekpoji oil terminal. Furthermore, the other Nigerians, as well as the administrator of WAPCO Benin, were released. Recall, these Nigerian nationals were arrested last week by the Beninese police. They were suspected by Create prosecutor Mario Bertunu of being Nigerian agents serving the military authorities in Niamey. In a joint statement, the Nigerian Ministers of Justice and Oil denied the information given by the Beninese side. In a statement made the day after this issue, the Nigerian authorities, whose reaction should not have taken long, invited China, their partner in oil exploitation, to take its responsibilities regarding compliance with contractual clauses.
A more edit with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're live on WADR.org and on Facebook at WADR English Service. We head to Guinea for more on judicial matters as the trial of General Sadiba Coulibaly, former number 2 man in the ruling junta, began yesterday before the Military Criminal Court of Conakry. This former chief of general staff to the armed forces accused of desertion abroad and illegal possession of weapons. In court, the officer refuted the accusations against him, rather accusing the head of the Guinean diplomacy and certain army officers of being behind his arrest. Etisu shared further details in the following report.
At the opening of his trial, several charges were brought against him, namely illegal possession of weapons and desertion abroad, facts which he immediately rejected. General Sadiba Coulibaly reminded the court that he only had one personal weapon, which was given to him while he was on duty at the Mania Military School in 2008. The former number 2 of the CNRD, who until then was Guinea's ambassador to Cuba, is also accused of desertion abroad. Before the judge of the Conakry Military Criminal Court, the military officer said he remained at his post until May 22. General Sadiba Coulibaly also said he returned to Conakry because he could no longer tolerate the living conditions after the economic embargo imposed by the United States on Cuba. He adds that he informed the Minister of Foreign Affairs before leaving his post. The military officer also recalled before the court that it was on June 4 around 7 p.m. that elements of the Special Forces and the National Gendarmerie arrived at his home. After hearing shots from the military detachment that came to pick him up, General Sadiba Coulibaly himself said he went to the presidency before being subsequently handed over to the High Commander of the Gendarmerie, who sent him to the Direction Center of Investigations.
Eche Atisu with that report. Back here in Senegal, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye paid a working and friendship visit to Sierra Leone, where he met with his counterpart Julius Maada Bio in Freetown. During an interaction, the two spoke about bilateral cooperation between Senegal and Sierra Leone. At the end of the discussions, the foreign ministries of the two countries signed a joint communique in which several areas of cooperation were raised. Frances Piaget El Ghali is Sierra Leone's acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Les deux chefs d'État ont passé en revue l'état de la coopération bilatérale sur les plans politiques, diplomatiques.
The two heads of state reviewed the state of bilateral cooperation in the political, diplomatic, economic, social, and cultural spheres and identified concrete opportunities for closer collaboration in these areas. President Bongo took the opportunity to thank Senegal for its support for the Sierra Leone aviation sector, with the addition of Sierra Leone to the destinations served by Air Senegal. The two heads of state affirmed their commitment to making operational the Economic Cooperation Agreement signed in September 2021, covering mineral and petroleum resources, energy, manufacturing and agriculture, livestock and food security, fisheries, trade, banking, science and technology, and tourism. The two heads of states discussed the challenges facing ECOWAS in terms of democracy and reaffirmed their commitment to supporting a peaceful transition back to constitutional order and democratic governance in the countries concerned.
Affirmer leur engagement à soutenir une transition pacifique vers un retour à l'ordre constitutionnel et à la gouvernance démocratique dans les pays concernés.
Frances Piaget El Ghali, Sierra Leone's acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, speaking there. Gambia's 2024 National Population Census, which began in late May, is set to conclude today, Friday, June 14th. The census, conducted every decade, aims to provide a comprehensive and accurate count of the country's population, vital for effective policymaking and resource allocation. Our Banjul correspondent Sankule Janko has won this report.
Over the past weeks, census enumerators have traversed the entire nation from urban centers to remote rural areas, ensuring that every individual is counted. Some Gambians shared their views on the national process.
We've been enumerated because they came to the house, they met my wife, so they took all our details. It's very effective.
Actually, for myself and my household, that is my wife and my kids, we are yet to be enumerated. I understand they came to the compound I am renting, but myself and my wife are not yet interviewed. We are not yet enumerated.
The exercise, spearheaded by the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, GBOS, has faced several challenges. Nyakasi Sanyang is the Statistician General of the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, GBOS.
One of it is the non-compliance, and basically this is mainly on the non-Gambian. Of course, we know that internet connection or service is not available in all parts of the country. But the program is also developed such a way that you can always sync it later. So that is somehow limited. It's not a big challenge for us. But the other challenge is that certain parts of the country now are very hot. And some of these gadgets, if it is very hot, it affects their performance.
Despite these hurdles, the GBOS has reported a high participation rate.
As of Wednesday, June 12, 2024, data synchronized from the field show that 84% of households across the country have been enumerated, accounting for 80% of total population, which translates to 2,261,724 persons.
Although the census officially ends today, it is expected that after the Muslim feast of Eid, few days will be dedicated to give the chance to households that have not been enumerated to participate. As the census wraps up, preliminary results are expected within the next few weeks, with detailed data anticipated later this year. This information will be crucial in addressing key developmental issues such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure planning. For Newslink on West African Democracy Radio, I am Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Niger's deposed President Bazoum, now vulnerable to prosecution for crimes including treason, as the state court lifts his immunity. Senegalese and Sierra Leonean authorities agreed to deepen bilateral ties and cooperation. Trial of Guinea's former second General Sadiba Coulibaly opens in Conakry. Still ahead in the news, a constitutional review committee in Ghana proposes that presidents should pay taxes as a sign of good leadership to the citizenry. We also have the guest interview and a sports update. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. In Ghana, a Constitution Review Consultative Committee put together by the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs has recommended the amendment of the Constitution for presidents to pay tax. The committee wants Article 65 sub 5 of the Constitution scrapped to impose a president a duty to pay tax on his salary and emolument as an example to the rest of the citizenry. Other recommendations made by the committee is the number of MPs to be capped to 277. WADR's Accra correspondent Nadere Tete has more.
According to the committee put together by the Oseichi Mensah-Bonsu-led Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, the change will reflect the principle of equality before the law and align with the rule of law. This came up at a stakeholder consultation for a probable review of Ghana's constitution. A former member of parliament for Tamale Central, Inusa Fuseni, highlighted some of the recommendations of the committee.
They say that it flouts equity rules where the president receives money from the public purse and not pay tax on his emoluments. They've recommended an amendment to the constitution to allow the president to pay tax on his earnings. To impose upon him, if the provision is gone through, is carried through, to impose on him a duty to pay tax.
The committee also recommended the scrapping of deputy and regional ministerial portfolios and limiting the number of ministers in government to 25. Additionally, the committee is recommending a cap of 277 MPs. This would require amendments to Article 47 to ensure that the EC does not divide the country beyond the stated number. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
And just before the guest segment, let's take you to Nigeria, where the country's soldiers have killed 6 terrorists and recovered a large cache of arms in a counter-terrorism operation in Kaduna State, the military said on Thursday. The operation, which targeted terrorist hideouts in the Birnin-Gwari area, is part of a broader mission to restore peace and security in the region. From Abuja, WADR's Usman Omar reports.
Troops conducted a sweep of several villages including Maidaru, Ngade Alha, Dogon Dawa, Damari, Saulawa, Farin Ruwa, Maganda, Sabon Layi, and Kampanin Doka, engaging terrorists in combat and neutralizing 6 of them, the military authorities said. The soldiers recovered a general-purpose machine gun, GPMG, 2 AK-47 rifles, 6 AK-47 magazines, 1 FN rifle magazine, 22 rounds of 7.62 mm NATO ammunition, and 51 rounds of 7.62 mm special ammunition, as well as 2 motorbikes. Kaduna State, located in the northwestern region of Nigeria, has been plagued by banditry and communal violence, resulting in devastating casualties and destruction of homes and livelihoods in rural communities across southern parts of the state for several years. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this afternoon is an international relations expert, Morgan Asogba, who joins us with his reaction to the lifting of the deposed President Mohamed Bazoum's immunity. Take a listen.
We have to look at this from a legal perspective. It doesn't meet the normal criteria when it comes to former head of states and what they deserve, legally speaking. But if you look at it from a social perspective and you take into consideration the need for justice to go ahead irrespective of who is concerned as far as crime are concerned, you might say that this is a constructive decision that will help justice to reveal the truth of the fact and go ahead with all the procedures. But this requires also to have a look, depending or based on the critical situation ongoing.
The credibility of the state court is now at stake. How possible can the court ensure a fair trial during this military regime?
It is obvious that the credibility here is at stake. When you look at what has been done so far in terms of judiciary and in terms of all that surrounds the President Bazoum issue, him and his family, you could understand that there is a kind of lack of impartiality. The idea of prosecuting him stands in a normal legal system and should follow some key steps, and that has to be clearly established by offering him the opportunity to have a fair trial. But this is definitely not what is appearing when you listen to what the legal lawyers that are on his side are using as argument. It is clear that some basic principles are being violated. However, it is a process that is ongoing. The country has a legal framework, and I believe the legal framework will be followed cautiously. But it remains that credibility is not on the side of the current leadership.
So finally, do you see the possibility of Mohamed Bazoum being freed of all these charges against him?
If that possibility should exist, then the probability will be very, very, very low. It is seemingly obvious that President Bazoum will be not only charged, but he will be condemned at the end of this process because the leadership believes, according to all that they have identified, that he is guilty. And when you look at what his lawyers are also bringing out, it is obvious that at the end of the whole process, he will be found guilty and some sentences will be taken on him.
Morgan Asogba is an international relations expert. Up next is sports news with Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria has relieved Finidi George of his duties as the head coach of the national football team, Super Eagles. This comes after the Executive Committee of Nigeria Football Federation held an emergency meeting on Wednesday following the team's dismal performance in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. In a press statement issued on Thursday, the Executive Committee apologized to Nigerians for what it described as the dismal output and subsequent very poor returns of the senior men national team, Super Eagles, in 4 out of 10 matches in the ongoing qualification series for the 2026 FIFA World Cup finals. To this effect, the Executive Committee resolved to employ an expatriate technical advisor coach for the Super Eagles in the coming weeks ahead of the AFCON qualifiers and remaining FIFA World Cup qualifying matches. Meanwhile, Mali have also sacked the head coach Eric Schell, the country's football federation announced on Thursday. In a statement reported on national television, it gave no reason for the decision, but the sacking comes days after Mali were held to a goalless draw by 10-man Madagascar in a Group I World Cup qualifier in Johannesburg, according to media reports. The Executive Committee of Mali and Football Federation, meeting in extraordinary session, unanimously decided, with the agreement of the supervisory authority, to end the collaboration between the coach of the national team senior, Mr. Eric Sekou Schell, and the federation, the statement said. Mr. Schell was appointed as Mali's head coach in May 2022 and led the team to the quarterfinals of the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations in Cote d'Ivoire in February this year. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and David Vincent for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Also download our mobile application today from Google Play Store. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many